Morning, Tabang, and rest of the panelists. So my name is Chris Braybrook. I'm General Manager at Veolia. I've been here for 20 years. My background is engineering, but as we all know, we always move sideways, upwards, downwards, all these ways. But anyway, in terms of my group, Veolia, so Veolia is the largest environmental group in the world. Over 160,000 employees over the world. They've been operational for more than 160 years. So you can imagine that is a long time. And in terms of South Africa, we are about 700 employees. We have offices in Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town. We have branches in Namibia and Botswana. What our purpose is to assist clients in terms of resourcing water projects, and then also looking at how we can valorize the impact of water in terms of waste and all of those type of things. We have over 350 registered technology, so for us, we don't have to force something into a specific usage that doesn't fit that mold. For us, it's really important to talk about the circular economy. I think in terms of what you were saying, if we look at maybe three aspects, what is really important to us as Veolia in our country. Now I'm going to talk about SADC mostly. So for us, especially in South Africa, I think in the municipal sphere, it is important to look at what's happening with water. I think everyone has seen some of the statistics in terms of the people having access to continuous quality potable water, and then sanitary services. So this is a huge issue in our country, and it will not be resolved in a day or two. But it's one of the discussion points of today, I'm sure, is how can we improve what we are doing. And on that, I will then hook up with what Fadel was saying in terms of the triple Ps. It's something which we have to look at. Yes, it has to be qualified. It doesn't work everywhere, but we must look at that. I think the one thing we talk about, but not enough is done, is non-revenue water. To throw away nearly 40% of our resources is it's seriously bad news. So companies like ourselves, we would love to build plants every day, but it's not about that. It's about let's go for the low-hanging fruit, and those would be non-revenue water, those type of things. I'm sure it will be an important discussion point later on. In terms of the industrial sector, we have people like David here, and you'll find out from CocaCola. So I'm not sure people out there know that, how responsible the large corporates have been over the last decades. So they are pushing the limits, and we as technology vendors, we work with companies such as themselves to assist them in achieving their goals. Their everyday purpose is to manufacture their goods. Ours is to assist them in terms of optimizing, and it's always the ratios of liter water per use per liter of product. I'm sure David will expand on that. And then the last thing would be for me is what people see as a waste. This could be any biomass from a municipal sewage treatment works. It could be waste products from the food and beverage industry. And in this already, we have got nice references where we valorize these waste streams, and they could be very valuable in terms of the whole circular economy, which I opened up with. And I think people should just be more aware of that, and we should take ownership of those type of technologies that are there to assist in terms of, I think the big word for us in Africa is water security. So I'll end there and we'll take up the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Braybrook. We have Mr. Drew, David Drew.
Good morning, Tabang. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Drew. I'm the Sustainability Director for CocaCola Africa. So for my sins, I look after all the sustainability initiatives from a technical side, from Cape to Cairo and from Djibouti to Cape Verde, I think is probably the best way to describe it. So 56 countries and territories across Africa. And as you can imagine, in a continent like Africa, water is an incredibly, sort of high focus area. I think it's it's everyone who lives here knows Africa is in many areas water stressed, not everywhere. A colleague from Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire are blessed with more rain than most of us. But if you just look at the map, sort of outside of the sort of central West African area, you just go a little bit north or a little bit south, you really get into water stressed areas. So we have an enormous proportion of our continent that is water stressed. And as a business that operates across almost all countries and all territories, water stress and water access is critical both for our business and for the people that we sell to, and for our employees. So you can imagine that we kind of see water as one of our key sustainability pillars, along with our World Without Waste program, which focuses on packaging. As you can imagine, that's also a big focus, and our carbon footprint reduction. But water is something that has been integral to our business from the very beginning. And so, yeah, I look forward to understanding a bit more about what everyone else says. And as Viola, as Chris has already said, Viola is well versed in our requirements.
Okay, thank you there, Mr. Drew. Can we have Mr. Warming, Mans?
Yes, and thank you for inviting me. I'm from Danfoss and a global head of our water and wastewater activities. And Danfoss is a group with around about 30,000 people and 6 billion in turnover, and is also placed with a sales subsidiary in Africa. So we are deeply involved. What we do in the water and wastewater field is that we are the largest supplier of Danfoss derive, and what is that? That's basically electronic units which are able to regulate the speed on motors and pumps and what I know. What the benefit of this is, of course, that you can adjust without building big things. You can on existing facilities you can adjust them. And control them better, and I think that's a key. That it's not always a question about rebuilding everything or finding the money for that would be difficult, but more in that it proves that it's offering amazing results, going in and making controllability. And if I think back on what Fadel was mentioned, I couldn't agree more that there's a need for looking at it from a river basin point of view, also look holistic at the whole water cycle, figuring out what is there in fact available of water. And there's some technology which maybe is interesting if there's a lot of groundwater. There's in fact technology where you with a helicopter now are able to cover a major area. And figuring out how much water do you in fact have available. So that's a precondition as I see it. When you have that picture, then the next thing is to look in your toolbox and look into the industrial side. I think CocaCola was just touching on that. The same we know from breweries, we know from a lot of other industrial sites. We can also take it from Danfoss' own manufacturing. We have been able to cut our energy use with our water use with 80%. And I have seen figures from Carlsberg, and I have seen figures from a lot of others where they are talking about 50, 60% or even more. So I think certainly there's a lot to do there. Then we all know farming or food production is a key area. And again, what we see coming especially out of US, by the way, California and so on, is very advanced control of irrigation systems. So it's not a question about that we should not be able to produce food. It's a question about using the water which are available in a more sensible way. And I think there's great things to achieve there. Again, we have seen figures of 50%. And then back to, I think, what was mentioned from Chris and Viola was that if you look into cities, then it's not unnormal, or in fact, the global figure is that around about 30% of the water is leaking out, and I just heard a figure of 40%. Now, the big issue with that is usually that people have the point of view, then we need to replace all the pipes, which is not the case. You can By pressure management, that means that by splitting your network into pressure zones, it has been proven from, I think, 112 different cases in 10 different countries, that in average, they achieved a 40% reduction in leakage without replacing any pipes. And I think that's worthwhile having in mind that it's not everything about finding billion and billion and billion of dollars to build everything new or to do other things. You can in fact do a lot by using, some is calling it digitalization, back in times we call it automatization, it doesn't matter, but by being a little bit more clever in the way, by having more sensors, better control of your facility. And I think I will stop with these words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolme. Quite engaging points there. We're going to be asking tough questions, but they deserve answers. Because water insecurity, as earlier mentioned, is a serious global threat. And if we have to buy oxygen with COVID, imagine with water. Can we have Dr. Rembo, please?
Good morning, colleagues and the panel members. I'm Rembo Magoba, a water center manager for the CSIR, as Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Yeah. My research interest includes various water resource management, water and wastewater quality monitoring, and also environmental flows or impact assessment. As part of CSIR, our mandates or our forecasts include ensuring that South Africa or the continent in general have got a reliable, efficient, and a functional water and wastewater services delivery in the interest of economic development. Of course, this can only be achieved through the development and the refinement of smart water use and smart water infrastructure technology for public and the private sector, as we cannot only focus on the public service, but we also need to consider the private sector. Also, we understand the challenges that are driving the problems that are affecting water and sanitation, which include the poor planning and accountability in terms of the existing water resources. Also, we look at the lack of sound infrastructure operations and maintenance, which is affecting the functional of most of the wastewater treatment works within the municipal level. At CSIR, our strategic objectives includes the development of software tools that will improve water resource resilience, thus ensuring availability of water with good quality against the backdrop of climate change impact. And of course, there are so many other stresses. And we also have an objective that look at improving our water management systems through the contribution towards policy review, which is critical in overall water resource management. And also developing the tools and the techniques that will assist in terms of reducing the cost of service delivery, so that we can assist both the private and the public in reducing the budget associated with the water services provision. Of course, we promote equitable and also smart water use in that regard. We also focus on the issue of water testing, because you can have as much water as you can, but if the water quality is not good enough, that water is still not suitable for water services in the community. The development of fit-for-purpose technology for the development and the optimization of smart and robust water and wastewater infrastructure with improved operations and maintenance is something that is very key to water center, so that we are able to ensure that the wastewater infrastructure, which is mostly dysfunctional in most of the municipalities, it's brought back to its former state where we are able to service the country with dignity. CSIR, working with other water bodies and the government, will have to come together and ensure that the state of water and wastewater infrastructure throughout the country and the continent at large, it improves to a point where it elevates the pressures that is being faced by our current water resources, which is mostly the surface water. So as a result, CSIR packaged the solutions that will address the issue of dwindling water resources in the country, of which we package them in 3 areas. We have got smart water use, which focuses on the provision of knowledge, innovation, and skills in order to improve water supply and demand management throughout the country. And by that, we focus on water resource planning. Secondly, we have got smart water infrastructure solutions, which focus on the development of comprehensive water infrastructure life cycles. We look at the design and the operations and maintenance or performance management of the water and wastewater infrastructure, with a specific focus on the raw water reticulation, drinking water, and also the wastewater reticulation networks, to make sure that we have got a sound infrastructure to support the service delivery in the public and also in the private sector. Lastly, we consider the need of a smart off-grid water and wastewater treatment to also target those areas that are in the isolated areas, looking at rural communities where you don't have a dedicated water and sanitation system. We need to have a sound, decentralized water and wastewater treatment facilities targeting those areas where Department of Water and Sanitation in most of the countries are failing to extend their distribution networks. So by having such a decentralized system in those areas, we are able to support service delivery in those areas. So I will stop there and allow the discussion to proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rembe. Thank you. You also provided us good premises for us to launch our discussion. Let me perhaps in this 30 minutes, or rather 33 minutes that we have left, go back to Mr. Fidel. How can we better develop water supply and sanitation services in rural areas?
Thank you. I think with regard to access in Africa, we have many challenges. The first one is low rate of access throughout the country. You have, when you compare with other continents, you have in Africa, you have 67% of the people, of the population having basic access to water. And for sanitation, only 1/3 of the population has access to adequate sanitation.
Right.
And this is due to rapid urbanization. In Africa right now, you have 50% of the population living in the urban area. And in these areas, you have 60% of the population living in settlements that are not really adequate. And so in rural areas, you have, when you compare now between the rural and urban areas, you have a big divide. Because many of our rural population are relying on hand pumps that are not well maintained. In many countries, 40% of these hand pumps are not functioning. And there is not a good organization around the management of the hand pumps. They rely on community management in many countries, and as the spare parts are not provided adequately, and many of these hand pumps are not working. If you take the example of Angola, for example, you have a big divide between urban and rural. You have 63% of the population in urban areas having access, but in rural areas you have only 23%. So this is a big issue in Africa, how we can address this divide and close the gap in rural area between rural and urban. And also you have a gap in the pricing, because sometimes the unit cost of water is higher in rural areas than in urban areas due to the fact that the villages are scattered and the unit cost is higher to provide water in rural areas. So this is the main issue we will be facing to meet the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goal in water, because a lot of effort have been done in urban areas to strengthen utilities. As our colleague says, there are some progress on reducing non-revenue water. But in the World Bank, we have one of our managers, and I think also Mars talked about it. Let's fix the institutions that fix the pipe and not fixing the pipe. I think we have a big issues with regard to strengthening the institutions, utilities, organizing the governance of the sector, and having the right institution to really provide sustainable services to the population. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. Maybe Chris, you can come in there. How do we digitalize water and sanitation services, particularly in Africa? I think belonging to the technological space, what interventions can you, provide to then aid, or what could aid Africa technologically? How do we digitalize water and sanitation services so that it's seamless, it's cost effective, and it's easy?
Okay, so in terms of the digital age, I think we have also learned a lot during this COVID period, right, where people, even operators, didn't have full access to plants and all the challenges associated with that. So I would feel there's been a growth in terms of the demand for digital tools. What can they do for us? Yeah. In Veolia, we have deployed tools both for ourselves, where we operate large plants all over the world, because that has always been our core business. But in terms of new plants or a customer's plant, municipal plants, in terms of digital tools, what they can do, we were just talking about non-revenue water. So remember, non-revenue water is broken up into leakages in pipes and non-revenue collection in terms of water being consumed. So if you apply digital tools in municipalities, these tools can achieve a number of things. And I think that will be the first one we're looking at. It can monitor. I mean, if we have any measurement kind of equipment and we can get a signal, then you can put up a digital platform for it. So with that type of basis in the background, we can then monitor in terms of what your incoming water is, what is going out in terms of treated water. You can then collate all of that in terms of your revenue collections and so on. So that is not happening and so on. But that is what digital can do for you. So it is there not to take away work from people, but to make their lives much easier and to take out the human aspect where we could make errors and so on. In terms of further benefits of the digital tool, remember, if we, again, as I say, have outputs from any plant, whether it's a potable or wastewater plant and so on, a tool like that can manage all of the parameters much better than human beings running around with hand measurement tools and things like that. So if you implement this, you have a seamless data gathering, which can then go to any device, cell phones, all of that. You can sit at your home and be monitoring a plant, exactly what is going on there. And what this tool then does, you must remember, we talk about words such as compliance, uptime of a plant, efficiency of a plant, sustainability, convenience. And if I expand on that, just looking at Dr. Remo was talking about water quality. It's fine if we supply people with water, but it has to be of consistent quality. In terms of what digital tools can do is we can monitor and track the performance of a plant and check the quality of the water. If at all there's any dispute, you can go retrieve that data. Look at what we've had in Hammanskraal and all these places. He says, they, everyone. So you can eliminate all of those things because you have a scientific approach in terms of managing this valuable resource of ours. In terms of the tool, you go further, you build in KPIs into the tool. If, say, it is a private company operating a plant, you put the accountability on them in terms of a performance contract that they have. And the way they protect themselves is by installing these digital tools to ensure that you can pull off data at any stage to look at any of the plants. We talk about plant optimization. That's also if we can optimize our plants. And remember, we go back to the challenge what Fadel was saying, that in our country, urbanization has led to all our potable plants and our wastewater plants being overrun. Hydraulically, they're totally challenged. So we do not have the money to add on into this infrastructure. The first thing we can do, as we said, is the low-hanging fruit. Yes, let's go to non-revenue water. Secondly, let's optimize what we have. The digital tool, you can also build in training programs. You can bring back the original operating manuals or conditions of such a plant, and you can upskill the operators, because one thing we haven't discussed is we also have a situation where we do not have the required skill sets for our operational people. So we need to up that. And this can all be incorporated into the digital tool. And, I can speak 2 hours about it, but I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to summarize, Tabang, is that if you apply digital, once again, it collates and it collects data all the time, and it takes away the human aspect in terms of making mistakes. We still need people to physically operate the plant, but why not integrate science with what we are doing? In that way already, without huge investment, the return is much better. Remember how much new jobs we can create if we can optimize our plants. If we had to go in statistics in what state they are, it is tremendous, and again, it will require lots of money. So yes, it will be a combination of investing in people, certainly in some infrastructure upgrading, but then also applying digital smart tools. And these are based in the cloud. You do not go into the municipality or the client's IT system at all. It is freestanding alone, a modem, that's what you need, and we need output from the equipment. And on that basis, you can build in many, many benefits into the digital tool. Thanks.
Thank you very much Chris. Mr. Warming, maybe you can come in here. How can we use and reuse local water supply in a sustainable and efficient manner? And I mean, let's take into consideration, predominant industries that use a lot of water, your construction sector, your manufacturing sector, and so forth. How could we then, I think this could be concomitant to what Chris has just mentioned about using technology as a way to sustain water supply.
Yeah, but I can only agree with what Chris Wright was saying here, and think also that, or we at least are talking a lot about digitalization in practice.
Yeah.
And the reason I raised that is that sometimes it gets a little bit maybe too advanced when we talk digitalization and IA and what do I know. What I see around the globe is in fact that digitalization in practice for me is very much down to the earth, some sensors, which rightly Chris just mentioned here, which measure what is going on. Some people who know how to control the facility, and that you can do with computers, and then some wireless speed drive who can then do the regulation, and that you can apply both on the wastewater, on the drinking water facility, on your network. You can do it on irrigation, you can do it on the industrial side. It's basically the same thing. It's a question about knowing what is going on. And then having, of course, the know-how, as we always mention, others have that, how to process control it. But there's so much low-hanging fruit there from my point of view. That's the one thing. And I think then back to what Fadel also mentioned in the intro, I think really, because that's what we see on the industrial side also, if I should come back to that question, that sometimes it's also a question about really trying to figure out where are we using how much water and why. It seems stupid simple, but it's really the case. I can talk at least for our own. We were using production. We were using a lot of water just for cooling purposes. It was running 24 hours. We are living on a small island. If we kept pumping all the groundwater we did, we would get salt intrusion. Now, that's some years ago, we had to investigate. Now we figured out, quite simple, that we in fact only need the cooling for 20% of the time. But because water was free and nobody had looked at it, it was just pumping 24 hours. That there will be a lot of around. So I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit just to begin to look at it, and then begin to use, as I said, digitalization in practice. And then on top of that, if you want to, then what Chris says, then you can of course put it into the cloud and you can supervise it from wherever you want in the world if you want to go to that. But again, I think last year I was also mentioned that case we have in Denmark where they're doing exactly as Chris say, that the facilities are operated by computers. There's only people there 6-7 hours a day, and the computers can do it better. But I really think there's some great low-hanging fruit there. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warming. Can we get Mr. Drew, David? I mean, Coca-Cola being in the beverage industry, it's existed for decades. What sustainability, or rather water sustainability initiatives that Coca-Cola has initiated under its corporate strategy or agenda?
Thanks, Tabang. So, yeah, I think a little bit more than decades. It's just over a century. So,
oh, excuse me.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that all day. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that yeah, you if you've been around for a long time, you got to look forward a long time as well. You can't act for the short term, and I think that's why, you know, to give you some idea, Coca-Cola, water has obviously been a key part of our business for a long time. And as Chris indicated in the beginning, you know, it really has started with focus within our plants in terms of what we use. And then over the last few years, I think the strategy and the awareness of the extended impact of our business is growing. And I think that's something that businesses are applying to sustainability, you know, more generally. You know, so you don't just look at your carbon footprint, you look at the carbon footprint of your suppliers. You don't look at just, you know, what happens to your packaging, you know, when you use it, you look at what happens to it after your customer has used it. So it's really this kind of sort of, you know, in waste, we talk about extended producer responsibility. And I think in water, what we're really looking at is this extended scope of responsibility to water. But it does start within your plant. And obviously that's why something like water use ratio has been a focus for a long time. And just to give you some idea, in 2004 in South Africa, it took about 2.7 liters to make a liter. And currently our two bottlers are achieving 1.6 liters. So that's a significant improvement. And as Mad says, you know, a lot of that was low-hanging fruit. But now we're getting into the difficult stuff. Now we got to be really, really clever. You know, I think 1.6 is really world class. I think a lot of businesses would be very happy with that. As a company across Africa, we're not there yet. We're still closer to between 2 and 2.1. So we've got some work to do in the rest of Africa. But our strategy is really driving to getting everyone down to those kind of low levels. So that's where we start. We start within our businesses, and then we start to look outside of our business. Then we start to look, you know, upstream and downstream. Unfortunately, we don't have a huge downstream impact on water. So as you can imagine, a business like a business is making soap or detergent would also have to look at the impact of their products of, you know, when the consumer uses them, if they're used with water, for example. So for us, it's a largely upstream. And you can imagine that a lot of that is about where we source our ingredients. Obviously, water is our biggest ingredient, but outside of that, it's the fruits and the sugars and things like that go into some of our products. And therefore, there's a big focus now on looking upstream and looking at how our, particularly in agriculture, and making sure that we can support sustainable agriculture to reduce the water use that is supplying ingredients that go into our products. And so this whole sort of system has been captured under what we called our Replenish program. In 2015, it really kicked off, and that was a sort of corporate initiative to restore and replenish a litre for every litre that we sell. And by 2020, I'm pleased to say that as a global business, we achieved that. And now we're moving into what we call Replenish 2.0, which is our sort of revised strategy that will guide our business towards 2030. And Replenish 2.0 is really taking it to the next level. And it's not something we've developed alone. We've actually spent a lot of time developing it with global water experts. And I think what we're also seeing is this kind of maturing approach to water. And to sort of give you one of the core tenets of it, it's really about, whereas Replenish was kind of looking at, as I like to describe to people within our business, we had one bucket, we had to fill it. And Replenish 2.0 says we don't have one bucket, we've got like 100 buckets. We've got a bucket for every place that we take water, and we have to start to look to replenish much closer to where we use the water. And I think Mads referred to watersheds earlier, and that's also a key tenet of the strategy, is to say we have to look at the watersheds that are supplying each of our plants, and we need to take action within those watersheds. And so that's about, a lot of it's now moving to nature-based solutions, which is about things like removing alien vegetation, water attenuation, aquifer recharge, and that's really going to make sure that the communities and the factories that rely on those watersheds for water supply are going to be sustainable in the long term. They're going to have water in the long term. And so, this is this kind of new balanced approach. Now, obviously in Africa, we also have a huge focus on community. I think all of the speakers have mentioned the challenges that we have with water in Africa. And so, alongside what we're doing within our business and within our supply chain, we're also looking at the communities in which we operate and sell, and we're looking at helping them improve access to water quality. So it's really about quality and quantity. So where people have no water, or the water quality is challenged. And then again, we work with a lot of partners to bring programs to those in the most need. It can be borehole programs. It can be assisting with the fixing of leaks and reticulation. I think a number of people referred to the water loss and leaks. It's huge. And so for us, in some cases, our most effective water programs are partnering with local water authorities to help them reduce leaks and do two things. One, we save water. Two, we provide more water to the community. So I think, yeah, there's a lot that corporates can do. Coke's not the only one doing projects like this, but as you can imagine, it's something that we have a lot of focus on and are particularly proud about.
Fantastic. Dr. Rembo, maybe you can just come in here, just, extending to what David has just said. How are you partnering with government initiatives to educate citizens about smart water use? I mean, you spoke about, smart water use through resource planning, water resource planning, building smarter infrastructures, performance management, and also smart water treatment. But it also boils down to the communities. How have you guys, as CSIR, partnered with government to ensure that this takes place?
Thank you very much, Thabang. This is a very touching point that you are raising. At CSIR, we work very closely with other government institutions like a DSI, and also Department of Water and Sanitation.
Right.
Of course, the water boards, which are so many across the countries, we collaborate in multiple projects with them, of which, as part of CSIR, the issue of skills transfer becomes very central to make sure that partnering with the Department of Water and Sanitation, or DSI, we capacitate the younger generations in terms of understanding the technology that is required to support the smart water use and the issue of smart water technology. I think we are living in a world where technology is becoming something that is very fashionable, especially to the youngsters, where it becomes very easier to train them in that area. It has been seen as something that is very difficult to reskill the older, if I can use the word, older generation to come to play a part in terms of embracing the technology in a way that they can advance the the service delivery within their areas. So there is a challenge, I must say, in terms of embracing the smart technology that is available now by the existing or older generation versus the younger generation. We are seeing a young crop of younger scientists and engineers coming in with a new innovation in terms of water treatment. My colleagues alluded earlier on the importance of water treatment. So we also need to have an online system that will allow us to monitor our water quality online, which is something that has been done manually at the laboratories. We cannot continue with that system. We need to find ways to do this in a way that we are taking advantage of 4IR. But we need the government departments to be at the forefront of such initiatives. So we only provide the support to the relevant government departments that must champion that initiatives which involve the community. So it is an area where we really need to develop currently. If we are not that much feasible, and we really think we can do much better with the other departments like DSI, the Department of Water and Sanitation, and the Environmental Affairs as well.
Thank you very much for that. Just last round of questions, because we do have about 10 minutes left, so we just need to wrap up, but I'll just ask the last round. Maybe let's go back to Mr. Fidel. You know, some of the sentiments that you added around creating sustainable water supply and sanitation services in rural areas. We had a speaker in our previous summit from the embassy in Denmark, and he's the political coordinator, and he said, you know, unfortunately, Africa or South Africa doesn't have an issue of the lack of water supply. They have an issue of water wastage. What do you think of that statement, Mr. Fidel? Are we wasteful of water, or do we truly have a lack of water? And he was also, I mean, maybe we can go into issues around the prices of water in Africa, particularly also in South Africa. In our country, it's quite high, higher than Denmark and some of the European countries. We can go into accessibility and availability as well. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Thank you. So I think, yes, these both statements can be validated. I think we have enough resources in Africa. We have surface water enough surface water in Central Africa, for example. But the main issue is how we mobilize this water, surface water and groundwater for different users, I think. And this also raises the issue of the financing of the sector. I think the amount of budget that is dedicated to the development of water infrastructure in Africa is very low. So also the storage rate per inhabitant is very low compared to other countries. So we need really to put more money and more investment in the water infrastructure. So I think this is very important. It is estimated that we need 15 billion US dollar per year to meet the water and sanitation SDG, but we are far from this objective. And in many countries, the government are dedicating less than 1% of the budget to water and sanitation sector. So this is the main issue, how we mobilize enough resources, financial resources to really take profit of the water available. And you raise also the issue of the pricing. The pricing, but I don't think the pricing is sometimes very, very low. And I am surprised that you say that in Europe, water is less expensive than in South Africa. I don't think so, because maybe you are taking a slice of the question, you know, because in Europe, you have water, you have sanitation, everything is, and if you take the as a two side, and I think it's far more expensive than in Africa. So because in African government don't want to charge the real cost of the water, and you have a lot of subsidies, and it raises the issue really of the financial sustainability of our utilities. And also the people are very poor, and you can't really charge the real cost of water in Africa. But with regard to waste, I think we are no longer talking about waste, but the resource. Wastewater is now considered as a resource, because with regard to circular economy, I think it is very important to change the paradigm, to shift the paradigm and use wastewater as a resource. And because in Africa, I think in 2025, 65% of Africans will face water usstress. And while the wastewater, only 10% of the wastewater collected is reused. In Israel, I think 90% of the wastewater is reused for agriculture and even for drinking water, to recharge as aquifers. So I think this is the picture for Africa, how we can embrace the circular economy and try to really change the mindset of people, how we can reuse wastewater to recharge and also storm water to recharge our aquifers, and really respecting the water cycle. Thank you.
I see you, Mads, you were nodding your head there, then there were other points where you went, what's on your mind?
Yeah, it's in fact on my mind. It's not first time I have heard the issue about low cost of water, and yes. I don't think there's a easy solution to it. But what I think is worthwhile having in mind was that last year we had a talk about saving energy, and as far as I know, energy is quite expensive in South Africa. And what one shouldn't forget is that some of the low-hanging fruit we were talking about, for instance, reducing leakage, or we spoke about irrigation also. I think last year I also mentioned that we had a case in South Africa where they, by introducing simple process control, was saving 55% of their energy. Now, at the same time, they were regulating the use of water a lot better. So maybe the energy tool could be used as something at the same time saving or utilizing the water in a better way without having to raise the price of water. And that was the reason I was nodding and thinking a little bit that there's maybe a link there which could be used.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Chris, maybe you can extend on that point. I mean, one, are we water insecure? And if we are, how do we mitigate these?
Okay, so we've raised some points here, but I think we've only scratched the surface, unfortunately. But yeah. In terms of, I would like to make a statement. In our group, it's like David, we've been around more than 100 years. So you reach a point where you're a technology vendor, but from there you need to see what is your purpose. And I do believe that companies, governments, everyone, you need to realize that if we sign up agreements in terms of supporting SDGs, we should be applying them into what we're doing. So that's for instance, I'm getting back to what Mads and these people were saying, if we improve our infrastructure, automatically we are upping the skills level of our people. So that fits into the SDG in terms of skills development. What we are doing, we're creating access to water by improving these facilities and so on. And exactly what we were saying, not enough emphasis is to look at what we consider as a waste stream. In industry, for people like David and them, they endorse that, responsible companies like themselves, but there are many, many others who do not look at getting to a zero discharge status and so on. If we can get people to start thinking more that the driver should be, if we sign up agreements to improve people's lives, water in this sector can play a big role if we apply all of these, as I say, because it's also about the waste in a wastewater plant. Remember, wastewater plant is a grudge purchase for most people. But if we take that wastewater plant and we have digesters, as we said here, we can generate 40% electricity on that plant. We have built plants in China that are 100% off the grid in terms of using biomass to generate electricity. Now, again, if you go measure that against the SDGs, you'll tick off a number of the boxes in terms of what you're achieving, because recently, United Nations, we all saw when they start monitoring just access to water, we are failing. We're not getting close to the goals. So sorry, I've spoken a little bit and we're running out of time, but I'd like to close with that.
Thank you so much. We've got 10 minutes left there. Drew, do you want to come in, David? I see you have
Cool, thanks, Thabang. Yeah, I think the question is, I think, let's be honest, there are areas particularly, and obviously my ambit is to look at the whole of Africa. There are certainly areas in Africa that are truly water stressed and are, let's say, population growth is often population growth is probably, or population movement is one of the greatest challenges. You have people moving to where the water isn't. And I think that creates this additional sort of requirement for infrastructure. And even in the US, they're talking about how could we move water from the East Coast to the West Coast, because more people have migrated to places like Texas and Nevada and California, and yet the rain is still where it used to be. So within South Africa, I think Cape Town is an example of that, where the population has increased significantly. Obviously, you throw on top of that a drought, and then you have a challenge, which means that water infrastructure and water sort of mitigation and storage. I personally grew up in KwaZulu-Natal, and I mean, I remember as long ago as sort of the 80s, understanding that the river that supplies Durban, which is the Umgeni, is actually one of the smallest rivers in KZN. It is literally, there are three monster rivers, the Umkomaas, the Umzinkula, and the Tugela, but none of them supply water to the community, which really is a huge opportunity missed. So I think there's definitely a case for infrastructure and good long-term planning. But then, in the absence of that, or while we wait for that, let's say, what can we do quickly? And that's where we come down to sort of smart use of water, reducing our water use. And that's why that's become such a focus for us as an organization. Chris mentioned it. Ideally, we would like to have plants with zero sort of output at the end of the day. We also got to look for clever partnerships with other industries. We talk about what could another plant do with our wastewater. So if someone needs water, for example, for cooling towers, you could take water that has been used from a beverage factory, been used to clean, has been treated, and then can be used in a cooling tower, as opposed to taking more water from the potable water supply. So I think there's a combination of things. There are truly issues caused by where there's not enough water, but there's a lot of opportunity for us to improve access to get and responsibly use groundwater, and most importantly, to just use water better.
And it's all about value creation. That's exactly what you've mentioned. How do we create value from what we deem as waste? Waste is waste if you think it is wasteful.
I mean, I think the Israeli example is really an inspiration, because what do they say? Necessity breeds invention, and I think Israel is probably one of the best examples of that. Now, if California did that, or if Cape Town did that, or if parts of water-stressed North Africa did that, we would be in a much better position.
Thank you so much there, David. Dr. Rembu, I think what are your final thoughts around what we've discussed? How can we conscientize water reuse, in your opinion?
Thank you very much, Thabang. I think both water scientists and the engineers have to seriously establish some potential risks associated with water reuse and effective treatment technology if we are to reduce the current pressure on surface water resources. We really need to support the national water mix the over-reliance on surface water alone is not going to help the country and the continent at large. So if you look at South Africa, we have got the best legislations in the world, well-crafted infrastructure development plan, and leading water resource technologies and management capability.
That's right.
However, we are lacking good implementers who will ensure that enough water is acceptable, of acceptable quality. It's available for future to sustain both healthy economy, high social standards, and also healthy ecosystem. So, so I will say we really need a strong collaboration between the organization institutions to consolidate our efforts if we are to succeed in providing a good service delivery in the country. We cannot go on working in isolation if we are to win this battle. Thank you, Taban.
Thank you so much to all of you. I truly appreciate your time. You know, you're so right, Chris, we only touched the surface. There is so much. You know, next time I think we need to have a pre-recorded session, 30 minutes per person, if not an hour per person, and see how we can spread it throughout the conference, because there is so much that you have offered. And truly, thank you for your time and what you have already given us. I think we'll then, we'll just form the next step, to our next discussion. So we appreciate your time and all the best for your future endeavors in your organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Ciao, ciao. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Sustainable Water Resource Seminar, and truly thought-provoking questions around how do we digitalize water supply and sanitation services, but most importantly, how do we conscientize society around water reuse and being smart. It's all about being smart for the future of our kids and generations that are to come. We are now going to be going into the Sustainability, Transport and Mobility Seminar in partnership with Sunrail right after this. Stay tuned.